Okay, let's unpack this. If you're ready to maybe have your fundamental understanding of stability and time challenged a bit, you are definitely in the right place today.
Yeah.
We are doing a deep dive into a really new, kind of groundbreaking phase of matter, time quasicrystals, TQCs for short. Now, this material, it honestly sounds like something straight out of speculative fiction because it really does defy our traditional ideas about time, about symmetry. Think of it, like this. A standard clock repeats tick tock, tick tock. Simple. A TQC, though, and it doesn't just repeat, it keeps this long range order while doing this incredibly complex non periodic oscillation. So it's organized, yes, but it actually never follows the exact same cycle twice. Wild. Our mission today is basically to get our heads around what makes TQCs different. Different from regular crystals, different from spatial quasicrystals, and standard time crystals, too. We've got a bunch of sources here explaining the physics, the experiments that made them, and maybe most importantly, the really kind of wild implications this stuff has for quantum technology.
What's fascinating here is, well, TQCs are a really critical step forward in how we understand non-equilibrium dynamics. That's systems that are stable, even though they're constantly moving, never really settling down. And when we talk about symmetry, TQCs specifically come from something called the spontaneous breaking of time translation symmetry.
Okay, that phrase sounds dense. Can we simplify that a bit? Time translation symmetry.
Right, so time translation symmetry just means the laws of physics don't change over time. They're the same now as they were an hour ago, or will be an hour from now. Pretty fundamental. When a time crystal breaks this symmetry, it means it spontaneously develops its own stable rhythm, like it decides on its own beat. Now, a standard time crystal, it picks a simple, repeating rhythm, think AB, AB. But a TQC, oh, that's different. It creates this intricate dance of multiple temporal rhythms that are ordered, yeah, but they never actually repeat. It's order without strict repetition.
Right. That's the core thing, isn't it? That non-repeating order. To really get it, maybe we should back up a step. Let's talk about the building blocks first. The older sibling, maybe. Spatial quasicrystals. What are regular quasicrystals, QCs, and why were they such a big deal back then?
Oh, spatial quasicrystals, QCs. Yeah, they were a huge shakeup in crystallography back in the 1980s. See, before QCs, the textbook definition of a crystal required perfect periodicity. Like stacking identical Lego bricks, they had to repeat perfectly in all directions. QCs just blew that assumption away. They showed you could have perfect long-range order without that periodic repetition.
How does that work, though? Order without repetition.
Think about tiling a floor. A normal crystal uses, say, identical square tiles. They repeat perfectly. A QC might use maybe a mix of shapes like pentagons and diamonds. They fit together perfectly, fill the whole space, no gaps, maintain this amazing global order. But if you look closely at any small patch, that specific arrangement never repeats exactly anywhere else. You can't just copy-paste a small section to build the whole thing. And they showed off symmetries, like five-fold rotational symmetry, that were thought to be impossible in classical crystals. Just forbidden.
Okay, so QCs achieve order in space without repeating patterns. Got it. Now let's bring time back into the picture. You mentioned standard time crystals earlier. They work in time, but they are periodic. So using that clock analogy again, a standard time crystal is like a perfect pendulum, right? Swinging back and forth forever. Predictable, steady, repetitive. ABAB.
Exactly. TQCs then take that periodic nature we just discussed for spatial QCs, and they apply it directly to time. So if a spatial quasicrystal is like that non-repeating tiled floor, a time quasicrystal is like an oscillating system, atoms or spins flipping, where the configuration, the state of the system, never exactly repeats its entire cycle.
So multiple rhythms playing out simultaneously.
Precisely. Instead of just one simple beat, you get multiple emergent frequencies. And crucially, these frequencies are incommensurate.
Incommensurate. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means their frequencies aren't related by simple whole number ratios. Think of two metronomes. One clicks every second, the other clicks every, say, pi seconds or square root of 2 seconds. They might start together, but they'll immediately start drifting apart, creating this complex beat pattern that never ever perfectly repeats or synchronizes again. That drifting, complex, yet perfectly ordered and stable dynamic. That's the heart of a TQC.
Okay, wait. That raises a question for me, maybe for you listening too. If the system is constantly changing state, never repeating, how do we even know it has order? Doesn't order usually imply predictability? And doesn't that need repetition?
That's really the philosophical and the physical leap here. It's a different kind of order. The order isn't maintained by simple repetition. It's maintained by these underlying local constraints that dictate the evolution, but applied globally. So while the sequence of states doesn't repeat, The mathematics governing those multiple driving frequencies is perfectly coherent. It's deterministic. And experimentally, you see it. Instead of one sharp peak in a frequency analysis like you'd get for a standard time crystal, you see two, or maybe more, sharply defined distinct peaks. But their frequencies are, well, mathematically unrelated, incommensurate. That's the signature.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, moving into what makes them unique. You keep mentioning those multiple unrelated rhythms, incommensurate oscillations. This seems to be the key differentiator. So why does this complexity lead to stability? You might think more complexity equals more ways for things to go wrong, more chaos.
Right, it seems counterintuitive. Let's try a musical analogy again. If two notes are commensurate, like a perfect fifth, they sound harmonious, stable, repeating. If they're incommensurate, their wavelengths don't line up neatly, creating a more complex, non-repeating sound wave. In a TQC, the atomic spins are essentially being played by two distinct microwave frequencies. And the ratio between those frequencies is irrational like 1 in pi. It can't be simplified to a nice fraction.
And this complex quasi-periodic state is somehow tougher.
Exactly. It leads to this quasi-periodic phase, which is mathematically richer, yes, but also highlights their resilience. TQCs turn out to be remarkably robust against noise and perturbations. This non-repeating structure, it seems to make it harder for random environmental noise, which itself might have some periodic components to effectively couple to the system and mess things up. Basically, the system doesn't offer up a single simple frequency for the noise to lock onto and disrupt.
Huh. So the complexity almost acts like camouflage against decay or entropy.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Precisely. That resilience against noise is the real physical payoff of this complex temporal structure. And that leads directly into this idea of the quantum clock. TQCs show these incredibly stable oscillations that, in theory, could persist indefinitely. They resemble a clock that does not require an external energy source for its operation.
Hold on, no external energy. How does that work? Doesn't that violate basic thermodynamics, the laws of physics?
Good question. It's a critical point. It's not actually defying physics, not creating energy from nothing. Let's be clear on that. The TQC definitely needed an initial energy input, those microwave pulses, to kickstart it to create the temporal order in the first place. But once that TQC phase is established, it exists in this special state of non-equilibrium that is self-sustained. It doesn't need continuous external energy pumping in just to maintain its internal oscillation pattern, unlike, say, a regular clock needing a battery change or winding. So it gives us this amazing working model of time-dependent quantum systems, many-body systems, that just never settle down into thermal equilibrium. They stay ordered and dynamic.
That is fascinating. Okay, let's shift gears then to the actual experiment, the breakthrough. This wasn't just theory on a blackboard, right? Scientists actually built one, engineered it. How did the physicists, specifically the team from Washington University in St. Louis, actually make this jump from theory to a real physical thing?
Yeah, this was just a brilliant piece of systematic work, really clever experimental design. They needed a system, right, where they could control and measure individual quantum spins with extreme precision. And their choice of material, the medium, was absolutely crucial. They used a diamond substrate.
Diamond, like a tiny piece of the gemstone. Why diamond? What's special about it compared to, I don't know, silicon or something else?
Diamond is perfect for this, mainly because of its incredibly rigid and stable carbon lattice structure. But more specifically, it's about these unique little imperfections you can create within it. They're called nitrogen vacancy centers, or NV centers.
NV centers.
Yeah, these are tiny spots in the diamond crystal, where one carbon atom is swapped out for a nitrogen atom, and right next to it there's an empty spot of vacancy. And what's amazing is that these NV centers behave like near-perfect isolated quantum systems, protected inside that super-stable diamond cage. Each NV center has an electron spin that's really sensitive to things like magnetic fields, which is great for control and measurement, but it's also surprisingly robust against background thermal noise.
Got it. So the diamond is the super stable platform, the chassis, and the NV centers are like the tiny quantum bits, the qubits that they needed to manipulate. Okay, so how did they go from having this stable setup to actually inducing that weird temporal order, that quasi-periodic rhythm we talked about?
Right. They didn't just stumble upon it. They engineered it step by step. First, they actually bombarded the diamond with nitrogen beams. This wasn't random. It was to create just the right concentration and type of these NV centers, very controlled. Then, once they had these nicely prepared NV centers, they used carefully timed microwave pulses. They beamed these microwaves into the diamond.
And the microwaves did what exactly? Shook the NV centers?
Sort of, but in a very precise way. The mechanism is often called a Floquet drive or Floquet engineering. They weren't just applying random energy. They applied two separate microwave fields at the same time. And critically, the frequencies of these two fields were deliberately chosen to be incommensurate. Remember that irrational ratio,
Mm.
like 1 in pi? That was engineered into the microwave pulses.
Ah,
These pulses then orchestrated the spin states of those NV centers. They basically guided them, manipulated them in just such a way that the system spontaneously underwent that time translation symmetry breaking. But crucially, it broke into the complex, non-repeating temporal structure defined by those two incommensurate microwave frequencies.
so they essentially created the two non-syncing clocks internally, using those specific microwave frequencies, forcing the spins to oscillate according to those two, clashing but ordered rhythms.
Exactly right. The collective behavior of the spins locks onto those imposed rhythms, and that collective state is the time quasicrystal. And the significance here is huge, really. Think about the discovery of spatial quasicrystals. A lot of that was initially kind of serendipitous, finding weird diffraction patterns. This TQC work, though, marks a real shift towards methodical creation, atomic-level orchestration. They didn't just find a new phase of matter. They systematically engineered its fundamental behavior in time.
That methodical creation, that engineering aspect, is the perfect bridge to the next big question. So what? Section 4. Let's talk about the payoff. If we can actually engineer this kind of complexity and guarantee stability in a system that's constantly changing, where could that lead quantum technology? What are the applications?
Well, the potential applications are genuinely transformative, and they hit right at some of the biggest challenges we face in quantum mechanics today. First, and maybe foremost, quantum computing.
Hmm.
TQCs seem to offer a really promising path towards fault-tolerant qubits.
Fault-tolerant, meaning they don't mess up easily.
Exactly. Remember that inherent stability against noise we discussed, that camouflage effect, that could dramatically enhance coherence times. Coherence time is basically how long a qubit can hold onto its fragile quantum state before the environment scrambles it.
And longer coherence is the holy grail, right?
It really is. It's the bottleneck for building powerful quantum computers. If TQCs can help a qubit stay coherent for, say, minutes instead of microseconds, the complexity of calculations we could run just explodes. It's a potential game changer.
So how much better are we talking? Does this quasi-periodic driving totally eliminate errors or just significantly reduce them?
It significantly dampens the error rate. Research is showing that using these quasi-periodic drives really suppresses how quickly environmental noise can dephase the qubit. Because the qubit's own oscillation is so complex and non-repeating, it's much harder for that random, often periodic background noise to effectively transfer energy and destroy the quantum information. So they could function as incredibly stable quantum memory units, or maybe registers within a larger quantum processor, holding quantum information safely for longer.
Okay, quantum computing is huge. What else?
Second area, precision sensing. Remember we said those NV centers are naturally sensitive.
Right, sensitive to magnetic fields and things.
Exactly. So while the TQC phase makes the overall system robust against general noise, the individual NV centers within that structure remain highly sensitive sensors. Using them in this TQC configuration could potentially boost our ability to measure very subtle changes, like tiny magnetic fields or other external influences. This could lead to next-generation atomic clocks with even greater accuracy or perhaps advances in medical imaging, like MRI.
Wow, okay. And then there was the really speculative one. Almost sci-fi sounding. Energy storage.
Yeah, that's definitely more speculative at this stage, but really intriguing. The idea of the TQC as a quantum battery. Because these TQCs are stable while being out of equilibrium, the thinking is they might be able to store energy in their quantum states. But with significantly reduced energy loss, minimal dissipation through the charge and discharge cycles, much better than conventional batteries. Some models even envision them as potentially acting like tiny, self-sustained AC power sources at the quantum level. Very efficient energy storage and delivery.
Okay, that really does cover a spectrum. Fault-tolerant computing, super-sensitive sensors, maybe even quantum batteries. Amazing. So looking ahead now, Section 5, the bigger picture, where is the research heading? What are scientists trying to figure out next to push this even further?
Well, the research is definitely buzzing. People are focusing on a couple of main directions now. First, really digging deeper into the fundamental physics, investigating exactly how different kinds of symmetry-constrained non-equilibrium dynamics work. How do specific symmetries, beyond just breaking time translation, help stabilize these complex phases? What role do long-range interactions between the spins play? And then there's the big engineering challenge, the really ambitious goal. Efforts are underway to try and engineer TQCs with even more complex finite abelian symmetry.
Okay, finite abelian symmetries. What does that mean in terms of the TQC's behavior? You mean making them even more complex than the two-frequency model?
Exactly. Think of the first TQC as being orchestrated by, say, two simple clocks running out of sync. The goal now is to create systems that are governed by maybe hundreds of different rhythms, all mathematically related in specific ways, defined by these abelian groups, but still collectively non-repeating.
So moving from a simple 2D quasi-periodic pattern in time to incredibly intricate, high-dimensional temporal structures, custom-designed time patterns.
That's the dream. If we can reliably create and manipulate these complex symmetries, it essentially means we can encode information directly into the pattern of the oscillation itself. It dramatically expands the toolkit for controlling quantum systems. It could lead to entirely new forms of quantum information processing where the information isn't just stored in a qubit state, in 0 or 1, but in the very rhythm of the material itself.
Okay, we have covered a lot today. Let's try a quick recap. TQCs. They're these weird, non-periodic but long-range ordered structures in time, created by precisely zapping atomic spins, like NV centers in diamond, with specific, incommensurate microwave pulses. And the promise is stability, fault tolerance, which would be revolutionary for quantum computing, sensing, maybe even energy storage down the line, allowing quantum systems to stay stable and useful even while constantly changing.
That sums it up really well. This research definitively shows that profound order can emerge and persist, maybe indefinitely, even without simple repetition or needing continuous energy input to fight off decay. It challenges some old assumptions. And that brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. If physics allows for, and we can now engineer, systems that show stable, complex, time-dependent behavior without ever reaching thermal equilibrium, does that force us to rethink what stability even means in the universe? Does it change how we view the fundamental limits or even the nature of time itself if order can thrive without simple cycles?